Okay, so now that we've done the left side on the Juke, at least working with the theory that I know what I'm doing. Now that I've done one side, I'll do the other side. I'll try to do this side with some more video that's not, all broken, chopped and changed. I'll try to do it this way as somebody actually knows what they're doing, and see if we can maybe get some perhaps better clips than we did on the last round with the left side. Okay, so step one, loosening the lug nuts before the thing is up in the air helps you with removing the tire and wheel assembly once it is up in the air. And of course, jacking and jack stands for security and safety. Make sure that if it does move, at least there's a solid jack stand there. You'll also notice that the front tires have been chalked. Then coming around to the inside, we have to pop this little cover off. And that gets us into this rubber cap and the assembly for removing the shock absorber. You've got on the top of the shock, you've got the bushing. Here we go. If I come back across to this side, you've got the bushing goes into the hole. Then you've got this washer goes over the top of it. And then finally, the nut for the shock shaft. And that's the sequence. So boot comes off, nut comes off. Now on the top of the shock, there is this flat. You have to hold that. I've just used a vice grip to hold on to that as I undo the nut. But of course, there's other ways you can use various wrenches, spanners, or other tools that will engage and hold that shaft while you undo the nut. All right, so that's where I'm at now. Just going to get in here, remove this boot, and remove this shock absorber. Okay, so we're on the right side and the shock absorber is now removed. Next thing to do, take that sway bar linkage, remove it. We'll remove this top nut and we'll loosen this guy. Now before we remove the top nut, the spring compressor will go onto the spring. Well, here's a fun difference when doing the second side. The sway bar link sits tight down in the lower control arm, or the lower suspension arm, because of course the other side is hanging. As we found on the first side, we needed to have the opposite side hanging down for clearance purposes. However, if that's going to come out of the suspension arm so that this can be jacked to pre-compress the springs, then the first side has to be, the lower control arm has to be jacked up. So that's probably a valuable little tip that I've just figured out, and I'll get on with it now. Okay, another difference on the right side is we've got the fuel line coming down here, and as you can see, that is devilishly tight. What I'm thinking, I'll get this spring as compressed as possible using the left side. I've already got it jacked up to the point that it's come off of the stand, so the spring is under compression right now. If I'm lucky, that'll be tight enough. I'll do what I can to get in there and try to tighten that a little bit more, but I can't get above that with the ratchet. So on this side, we'll get this ratcheted down tight. And yeah, I can foresee some headaches here as a result of that fuel line coming down. That's the fuel filler line. So a bit of an update here. As you can see, the suspension arm has been released, and as I did on the other side, I left this too late, but these little hoses, the brake line and this hose, they need to come off so that they stay clear. This comes down, and we've got movement here, but that spring is still in, and that fuel line is in a terrible position for trying to keep doing this. However, we don't have a choice, so I'll get on with it. This side is pretty clear, so I can keep compressing here. But yeah, I'm not so sure about this side. I might get the jack back on, bring this hub assembly back up, and keep working it in that way, so there's not quite so much tension on the compressors. This is only a few minutes from the last update. I just did a couple more cranks on that compressor that was on the back side where I had access to it. A couple more cranks on that, and a bit of wrangling here was enough to get it to drop out. So not too bad. I think I've got enough compression here that once the 40 mil spacer is in, I will need to bring these down a bit more. So I'll just crank these babies down, get the 40 mil spacer in place, and there we can see the lower spacer, or the lower bushing, and then of course that nub where the upper spacer centers on that alignment pin. So it's looking pretty good. This was so much faster, I guess, as I should expect, so much faster than the other side, now that I theoretically know what I'm doing. And I'll be back to you soon. Alright, I'm excited. Number 2 is in. It was a lot more wrangling around, and because of the positioning of the compressors, that side of the spring got a lot more compression than this side of the spring, so the spring is kind of at a curve almost, which really made this a bit of a devil to put this back in. However, it's lined up, can't see it very well down there, lined up properly in the bushing, the end of the spring where it belongs. This guy's seated against its pin, so now it's going to be a matter of recompressing. I'll come in with the jack, I'll bring this back up to recompress the spring under weight, and then get those compressors off of there. So, success is within my grasp. Back to you soon. Well, here we are, both sides done, everything buttoned up, and I've taken it for just a bit of a spin to settle things in. The shock absorbers are going to have to be replaced. Put a 40 mil spacer in there, the shocks will be running right at their full length of their travel, so that job still needs to be done, but that's easy by comparison to the rest. And so there's what we get. You can tell the difference in that clearance on the rear tire is quite dramatic with that 40 mil spacer, how much farther up it comes. Okay, so now having done the installation of the lift kit on the rear of the Juke, if someone was to ask me whether this was a reasonable do-it-yourself project, I guess I'd say if you've got some competence in working on cars or other machinery, if you've got experience, then I would say yes, it is. You've got to make some decisions when you're in there that will impact the integrity of the rear suspension, and I would hope that if you're doing this type of work that you've actually got the competence to be able to make those types of calls. If you're looking at it from an inexperienced person's point of view, then I would say take the thing into a shop and get it done. I think you're going to run into trouble. I think you could run into some problems that are just going to hang you up and potentially could cause some larger issues with the vehicle. Now, looking at it from an hour's point of view, I would estimate someone with competence and experience, you're looking at 4 to 6 hours to complete the rear end. The second side I did in just about an hour and a half, which I guess after having done the first side, you would expect the second side to go quicker. And as you've seen in the video releases, the first side took ages, but I was trying to figure out how to do this with the available resources that I had at the time. So yeah, 4 to 6 hours, you should be able to see your way through this thing. Make sure you've got the right tools, of course, which again could be a barrier to somebody who's not experienced or regularly working on vehicles. But also make sure you've got spring compressors, and I do believe that the leaf type of compressor is probably a better option than the type that I used. But as you saw, I got through it, so who's to complain about a good result? So that'll wrap up this installation with the rear lift kit from Tema 4x4 on the Juke, and I'm going to be back when I get onto the front, because that's the next half of the installation. Now that I've managed to do this, I think from what I can see, the front is going to be a lot easier. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the videos, you've gotten something from it, And stay tuned, because we'll be back with more as we work towards creating the Monster Juke or something like that. All right, thanks again for watching.